My mother just needed someone to take her to the hospital, but my car was in the shop. When I asked my husband for his car, he mocked me. She's a burden. Not my problem. Figure it out yourself. I simply said, all right. The next day, he called me 55 times. My name is Megan, I'm 33 years old, and my husband told me my dying mother was a burden. He chose an 18-hole golf game over her life, snatching the keys to his precious Tesla while she gasped for air on the floor of our living room. Figure it out yourself, he told me. And that's exactly what I did. I figured out how to legally and systematically dismantle his entire life by Monday morning. Before continuing this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you've ever had to teach a cruel partner that the woman they underestimated was actually the one holding all the cards. The sound of my mother choking on her own breath was the only noise in the house. Mom was 62 and had been living with us for 3 months after a minor heart procedure. That Sunday morning, she clung to the armrest of our sofa. Her face had a terrifying gray tint. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, and cold sweat poured down her forehead. My own car, a reliable but aging sedan, was in a repair shop across town waiting for a transmission part. We lived in a sprawling gated subdivision in the suburbs of Dallas. It was a neighborhood designed for extreme privacy, which meant we were miles away from the nearest hospital and completely isolated from any neighbor who could help. Every second felt like glass grinding in my chest. I ran through the kitchen, opening drawers and throwing mail across the granite countertops, desperately searching for the sleek black Tesla keycard. Bradley walked into the kitchen smelling of expensive cologne and freshly pressed linen. He was 35, a regional sales director, and cared more about his country club membership than his marriage. He stood there impeccably dressed in a tailored golf polo and spotless white shoes, calmly watching me panic. "I need the car," I choked out, grabbing my purse. "Mom's having a cardiac episode. Her left arm is numb, and she can't breathe. Give me the Tesla key card right now." Bradley didn't even blink. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the sleek black card, and deliberately held it out of my reach. A smug smile spread across his lips, the kind of arrogant expression he usually reserved for waiters who brought him the wrong vintage wine. "I'm meeting the regional vice president in 45 minutes, he said in a flat, irritated voice. "I'm not missing this game because your mother forgot to take her blood pressure medication. Bradley, she's having a heart attack," I shouted, stepping closer to him. "I just need to get her to the emergency room. It'll take 20 minutes. You can take a rideshare to the golf course." He stepped back. His jaw tightened with an ugly mix of disgust and impatience. He glanced toward the living room where my mother gasped for breath, her fingers digging into the upholstery. Then he looked at me with eyes as cold as winter ice. "She's a burden, Megan," he said. His tone dropped into a sharp, vicious whisper. "She's been a burden since the day she moved into my house. This is not my problem. Figure it out yourself." Before I could even process the absolute cruelty of his words, he turned around, walked out the front door, and locked it behind him. 10 seconds later, the soft hum of the electric engine faded down the driveway. He really left. My husband of 5 years abandoned my dying mother on the floor of our living room so he could go play golf. I didn't waste a second crying. My career as a senior financial risk analyst had trained me to shut off my emotions and compartmentalize severe crises. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. I knelt beside my mother, holding her cold hand and counting her breaths exactly as the dispatcher instructed. "Stay with me, Mom," I kept repeating, ignoring the burning rage rising in my throat. "Just focus on my voice." The 10 minutes it took for the ambulance to arrive felt eternal. The heavy pounding of paramedics' boots echoing across my hardwood floors was the greatest relief I had ever experienced in my life. They moved with intense, practiced urgency, securing an oxygen mask over her pale face and quickly loading her onto the folding stretcher. I grabbed my jacket and climbed into the narrow back seat of the ambulance with her. I held her fragile hand tightly as the massive vehicle lurched forward and the siren roared to life, shattering the quiet Sunday morning. As the paramedic connected the heart monitor, he looked at the erratic digital readings and then at me with a deeply serious expression. "Her heart rhythm is extremely unstable," he shouted over the siren. "We're skipping the county hospital. We need to take her directly to the cardiac specialty wing at Oakage Medical Center." Oakage was a top-tier private hospital. I nodded immediately, caring about nothing except her survival. "Do whatever you have to do," I told him. "I need to warn you right now," the paramedic said while adjusting the four-line. "Oakage is completely out of network for most standard insurance plans. They require a mandatory upfront copay of $5,000 just to admit a patient through their specialized emergency wing without prior authorization. You need to have that ready the moment we go through those glass doors, or they'll have to transfer her again, and she might not survive a second transfer." I squeezed my mother's hand. $5,000 was a huge amount to pay without warning, but we had exactly $80,000 safely stored in our joint savings account. I had absolutely nothing to worry about. Or so I thought. The ambulance backed into the brightly lit emergency bay of Oakage Medical Center with a sudden violent jolt. The rear doors flew open, and a swarm of nurses in navy blue scrubs rushed toward us. They wheeled my mother's stretcher away with such practiced urgency that I struggled to keep up. I followed them through the sliding glass doors into a lobby that looked more like a luxury hotel than an emergency room. The marble floors gleamed beneath recessed lighting, and the air carried a faint scent of eucalyptus instead of harsh disinfectant. They wheeled her behind a pair of heavy double doors marked "Restricted Access, Trauma Room 1." A stern-looking nurse raised her hand, stopping me in my tracks. "You need to wait out here," she instructed firmly. "The doctor is evaluating her right now and connecting her to the monitors. Please head to the admissions desk to handle the paperwork." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my trembling hands. The adrenaline was beginning to fade, leaving behind a cold, hollow exhaustion. I walked toward the massive mahogany desk where a need admissions coordinator was already typing rapidly on her keyboard. She asked for my mother's ID and insurance card. I handed them over, watching her eyes scan the screen. "Ma'am, your mother's Medicare plan is completely out of network for our specialized cardiac unit," the coordinator said in a perfectly polite but utterly inflexible voice. "As the paramedics likely informed you, hospital policy requires a mandatory initial deposit of $5,000 before we can proceed with any invasive diagnostic procedures or assign her a permanent room. We accept all major credit cards or direct bank transfers." I nodded, projecting a calm confidence I barely felt. "That's fine," I replied without hesitation. "Let me just transfer the funds from my savings, and I'll pay with my debit card in a few minutes. Please have a seat in the waiting area." She gestured toward a row of luxurious leather armchairs near a large window. "Come back to the desk when you're ready to process the payment. The doctors will continue stabilizing her in the meantime." I sat in the quiet waiting room. The only sound was the faint hum of the central air conditioning and the distant beeping of medical equipment. I pulled out my phone and stared at the dark screen. Part of me, some foolish fragment of lingering hope, wanted Bradley to know what was happening. We had been married for 5 years. Despite his unbelievable selfishness that morning, I thought surely a hospitalization would bring him back to reality. I pictured him on the perfectly manicured grass of his country club, laughing with his vice president. I dialed his number. The line rang exactly once before the automated operator interrupted. Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voicemail system. He had screened my call and sent me directly to voicemail. I called again. Straight to voicemail. He was actively looking at his phone, seeing his wife's name appear on the screen, and pressing the red ignore button while sitting in his golf cart. Fine, I whispered to the empty room. My voice trembled with a new kind of anger. You don't want to know about this? I'll handle it myself. Like I always do. I opened my mobile banking app. The biometric scanner read my face, and the familiar blue loading screen appeared. Bradley and I kept separate checking accounts for our personal day-to-day expenses, but we shared a high-yield joint savings account. That account held our annual corporate bonuses and a large percentage of our monthly salaries. For the past 4 years, we had painstakingly built that safety net until it reached $80,000. It was our emergency fund, our future down payment on a bigger property, our financial security. I navigated to the transfer menu, my thumb hovering over the screen, ready to move the $5,000 into my checking account so I could pay the hospital coordinator. Then I casually glanced at the available balance displayed in bold at the top of the screen. I blinked. I wiped the screen with my sleeve, assuming the glare from the hospital lights was distorting my vision. I closed the app, cleared my phone's cache completely, and logged back in. The biometric scanner confirmed my identity. Again, the screen loaded. The numbers staring back at me didn't change. My heart slammed against my ribs. Cold sweat broke across the back of my neck, completely different from the panic I'd felt when my mother collapsed. This was the cold, horrifying realization of absolute betrayal. I tapped the transaction history. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone onto the marble floor. Row after row of outgoing bank transfers filled the screen. Massive unexplained withdrawals. $10,000. $15,000. The most recent was an external wire transfer initiated just 48 hours earlier for $30,000. Every transaction had been digitally authorized under Bradley's user profile. He had systematically emptied our entire life savings. I stared at the bold black numbers at the top of my screen in complete disbelief. The joint savings account, the financial fortress I had built with my own blood and sweat, was completely empty. It contained exactly $42. I stared at the number 42 until the digits blurred into a meaningless shape on the glowing screen. My chest tightened under the crushing weight of a sudden panic attack. I couldn't breathe, but I forced air into my lungs. Falling apart in a hospital waiting room wouldn't magically bring back our savings, and it certainly wouldn't save my mother, who was fighting for her life behind those restricted double doors. I locked my phone, closed my eyes for 3 agonizing seconds, and imagined locking my fear inside a heavy steel vault. The time for being a devastated wife was over. This was a catastrophic financial crisis. And mitigating financial disasters was exactly what I did for a living as a senior risk analyst. I opened my social media app, driven by a sudden dark and morbid curiosity. I navigated directly to Bradley's public profile. He had posted a new photo just 12 minutes earlier. The location tag proudly displayed the exclusive address of Stonebridge Country Club, the most expensive golf course in the county. The picture showed his perfectly groomed hand casually resting beside a crystal glass of expensive vintage champagne. But the real focal point of the image was wrapped around his wrist. A brand new gold Rolex Daytona. I recognized the exact model immediately because he had spent the last 6 months constantly complaining about how a man of his status deserved one. The retail price of that specific watch was easily $30,000. Beneath the photo, his caption read, "Closed a huge deal. Treating myself. Earning that top-tier lifestyle one swing at a time." The shameless audacity of the post made blood pound violently in my ears. He hadn't closed a huge deal. He had stolen the money we painstakingly saved for our future to buy himself a shiny toy. He had drained our safety net while abandoning the woman who raised me to suffocate on the floor of our living room. He was drinking champagne and posing for the internet while my mother lay tangled in tubes inside a trauma room. I rose slowly from the luxurious leather chair. My legs felt numb and heavy, but my mind suddenly operated with terrifying crystal clarity. I walked back to the mahogany admissions desk. The coordinator looked up from her computer, offering a polite, sympathetic smile. I opened my wallet and deliberately ignored the debit card tied to the emptied joint account. Instead, I pulled out my personal emergency credit card. It was a premium high-limit card I kept completely separate from Bradley's finances strictly for my own peace of mind. He didn't know the account number and had no access to the login portal. I handed the heavy metal card to the coordinator. "Please charge the $5,000 to this account," I said in a completely flat, emotionless voice. She processed the transaction smoothly. The receipt machine came alive, printing the long slip of paper, and she handed me an expensive pen to sign the authorization. I signed my name with sharp, deliberate strokes, pressing the ink hard into the paper. As I handed back the clipboard, I looked out through the massive hospital windows. Sunlight poured across the carefully maintained hospital gardens. I imagined Bradley laughing on the golf course, proudly showing off his stolen watch to his wealthy friends. "All right," I whispered softly. The single word slipped through the quiet lobby like a cold, unbreakable vow. "All right, Bradley. You want to play a ruthless game with our money?" I returned to my seat in the waiting area, ready to call my sister and formulate an immediate plan. Before I could even unlock my phone to open my contacts, it vibrated violently in my hand. The screen lit up with an urgent text alert from a verified 5-digit shortcode. I tapped the notification open. "Fraud alert from Capital Express Bank. Did you authorize a $250 transaction at the Stonebridge Country Club bar using the credit card ending in 4492? Please reply yes or no to confirm this charge." I frowned, my thumb hovering over the glass screen. I didn't own a Capital Express Bank credit card. The last 4 digits meant absolutely nothing to me. But the flagged merchant location was the same country club where Bradley was currently sitting. Since I managed all of my mother's digital accounts and handled her online security, my phone number was listed as the primary recovery contact for all her banking activities. I opened my secure email app and searched for recent correspondence from that specific bank. That's when I noticed the name attached to the digital alert profile. It wasn't my name on the account. It was my mother's name. I stared at the fraud alert. Diane, my mother. Bradley hadn't just emptied our joint savings account. He had committed felony identity theft. The cold clinical part of my brain, the same part that analyzed financial risk models 50 hours a week, instantly categorized the threat level. I needed an aggressive counteroffensive. And I needed it immediately. I dialed my sister Sophie's number. She answered on the second ring. Sophie was 31, a pharmacist with a temper as fiery as mine was cold. I skipped all formalities. "Mom's at Oakridge Medical Center having a severe cardiac event," I said, keeping my voice low and steady so the hospital staff wouldn't overhear. Before Sophie could scream, I cut her off. "Don't panic. She's stable for now, but you need to come here immediately, and you need to bring Jamal. Bring his work laptop." Bradley emptied $80,000 from my savings, and he's using Mom's social security number to open fraudulent credit cards. There was dead silence on the line. Then the sharp sound of glass shattering. Sophie had dropped whatever she was holding. "We'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. Her voice dropped into a terrifying register. They arrived in 15. The double doors of the emergency waiting room burst open and Sophie stormed in like a Category 5 hurricane. Behind her was her husband, Jamal. Jamal was 34, a brilliant black attorney specializing in white-collar crime who spent his days dismantling corporate fraud networks. Even on a Sunday morning, he looked impeccable in a fitted dark sweater and tailored pants, carrying his heavy leather briefcase. He was fiercely protective of our family, and the hard set of his jaw told me Sophie had filled him in during the drive. Sophie marched straight toward me. Her eyes burned with unshed tears and pure fury. "Where is he?" she demanded loudly, causing people to turn their heads in the quiet lobby. "Tell me exactly what golf course that piece of trash is playing at right now. I'll drive my car straight onto the grass and run him over. Then I'll rip that $30,000 watch off his wrist and shove it down his throat." I grabbed her shoulders and forced her to look at me. "No, you won't," I said firmly. "If you go to that country club and touch him, the police will arrest you for assault. Bradley will play the victim. He'll press charges. You'll lose your pharmacist license, and he'll walk away with our money while we sit in a jail cell. I'm not letting him win like that." Sophie breathed hard, her fists clenched tightly, but finally nodded and stepped back. Jamal rested a heavy, reassuring hand on his wife's shoulder before turning toward me with his sharp, focused gaze. "Megan, tell me exactly what you need," Jamal said, his deep voice a steady anchor in the chaotic room. "I need your federal database access," I replied, pointing to the leather briefcase in his hand. "I'm a financial analyst, but I don't have legal clearance to run deep background checks without triggering security protocols. You do. I need you to pull my complete credit report, and I need you to pull Mom's report. Every open line, every inquiry, every authorized user. I need to see the entire battlefield before I start dropping bombs." Jamal didn't waste time asking questions. He nodded, moved to a small table in the corner of the waiting room, and pulled out his encrypted work laptop. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he logged into his law firm's secure portal. I handed him my ID and my mother's wallet, giving him the verbal authorization he needed to bypass the standard security blocks. Sophie paced like a caged tiger, staring toward the hospital entrance as if Bradley might actually have the nerve to show up. I stood behind Jamal, watching the blue progress bar crawl slowly across his screen while the system compiled data from the 3 major credit bureaus. The hospital lobby suddenly felt airless. I could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock. The progress bar reached 100%. The screen flashed and filled with row after row of financial data. Jamal leaned forward, scanning the dense text. Then he stopped. His posture went completely rigid. Slowly, he removed his glasses and looked up at me. His face carried an expression of absolute horror. "Megan," he whispered, all professional calm stripped from his voice. "The stolen savings account is the least of your problems. Look at this." I leaned over the edge of the small table, my eyes fixed on the glowing laptop screen. He pointed at a section under my mother's credit history. There were 3 separate revolving credit accounts listed under Capital Express Bank, National Heritage, and Platinum Trust. All 3 accounts had been opened within the last 4 months. All 3 were completely maxed out. Combined total, exactly $45,000. Jamal turned the laptop slightly so I could see more clearly. "Your mother didn't open these," he said quietly. "Someone used her social security number to bypass the standard income verification process. They exploited her decades of flawless credit history to obtain premium-level cards. The billing address on the accounts is a private P.O. box across town, not her residence and not yours. They also opted into paperless billing on all 3 accounts, redirecting the digital statements to a fake email address." He tapped another line on the screen. "But the digital authorization footprint traces directly back to an IP address registered to your home." Sophie gasped and covered her mouth with both hands. Her eyes drifted toward the restricted double doors where our mother was fighting for her life. "He stole Mom's identity," she whispered. Her voice shook with horror. While she was living under his roof recovering from heart problems, while she cooked his meals and washed his clothes, he was stealing her social security number to fund his luxury lifestyle. That's a federal crime, Jamal confirmed. His sharp legal mind was already categorizing the offenses: identity theft, wire fraud, elder financial abuse. He's facing serious prison time for this alone. Then Jamal looked back at me grimly. But Megan, you need to prepare yourself and look at your own report now. He switched tabs to my personal credit file. I had always been proud of my perfect 800 credit score. It was my professional badge of honor as a risk analyst. But sitting there in the active installment loans section was a massive auto financing agreement I had never seen in my life. Total loan amount: $92,000. Collateral vehicle: Tesla Model S. All the blood drained from my face. The Tesla, I whispered. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. He told me he bought it through some executive financing program from his software company. He lied to you, Jamal said bluntly, highlighting the signature authorization data on the screen. His own credit score is a disaster: 520. Multiple delinquent accounts and collections he hid from you for years. No reputable dealership would ever finance a luxury vehicle for him. He pointed again at the document. You're legally married, so he had access to your personal identifiers. He forged your digital signature on the financing paperwork and used your pristine credit history as the primary applicant to secure the loan. He's listed only as an authorized secondary driver. The scale of the deception was almost impossible to comprehend. Bradley hadn't just stolen $80,000 from our savings. He had buried my sick mother under $45,000 in high-interest credit card debt. And he had chained me to a $92,000 car loan. He was actively destroying the financial future of my entire family just to maintain the pathetic illusion of being a wealthy, successful executive. If he stops paying for the car, the bank comes after you, Jamal explained gravely. And if those credit cards default, your mother's Social Security benefits and retirement funds could become targets for aggressive debt collectors. He weaponized your family's finances to build his personal empire. I straightened slowly, pulling my shoulders back. The shock was completely gone now, replaced by a cold mechanical focus. A financial risk analyst knows the first rule of mitigating catastrophic loss: freeze compromised assets immediately. I refused to let my family become victims of his narcissistic greed. I looked directly at Jamal. How long does it take for a credit card transaction to appear as pending on a federal inquiry? Jamal frowned slightly. If it's a premium-level card, it pings the merchant network almost instantly, he answered while refreshing the secure portal. Why? Because my phone just buzzed again, I said, pulling the device from my pocket. I looked at the new automated text message from Capital Express Bank. Then I looked at Jamal's screen as the data refreshed in real time. A new pending transaction appeared at the top of the fraudulent account ledger tied to my mother's name. He's not just playing golf, I announced to the room. My voice echoed sharply against the marble walls of the hospital lobby. The screen showed a fresh authorization charge for $600. Bradley is sitting at the Stonebridge Country Club bar right now buying premium alcohol for his corporate friends, and he's actively swiping the credit card he stole from the woman fighting for her life 50 feet away from us. The pending $600 charge glowed on the screen like a neon sign. 600 on top of 45,000. I stared at it, and something inside me changed permanently. The terrified wife who had frantically searched for car keys 20 minutes earlier was completely gone. In her place stood a senior financial risk analyst staring at a catastrophic liability that needed immediate containment. Sophie exhaled sharply, her hands trembling with rage. He's buying premium drinks for his golf buddies with Mom's stolen identity while she's in the trauma unit, she said, disgust dripping from every word. Megan, let me go there. I'll drag him by his overpriced collar in front of his entire country club. I didn't answer immediately. When I finally spoke, my voice was so cold and calm that even I barely recognized it. If you go there and make a scene, he'll become the victim, I said. He'll tell his corporate friends that his crazy wife and unstable family ruined his networking event. Bradley survives on image. He built this entire fake life by maintaining the illusion of being a wealthy, successful executive. I looked directly at her. We're not giving him a public scene. We're giving him a complete systemic collapse. Jamal closed the credit report tab and immediately opened a blank legal document. I like the sound of that strategy, he said quietly, his fingers resting heavily on the keyboard. Tell me exactly what the plan is, and I'll execute the legal framework from my side. I paced slowly across the waiting area, my mind operating at full speed. Every financial crisis has a root cause and a containment protocol, I explained, looking between Jamal and Sophie. Bradley's root cause is arrogance. He thinks because he put my name on the car and used Mom's social security number on the credit cards, he's insulated from consequences. I stopped walking. Our containment protocol is to cut off his oxygen supply. I'm going to strip him of the three things he loves most in this world: his money, his carefully curated public image, and his freedom. Jamal nodded slowly, his attorney instincts fully engaged. The freedom part is easy, he said while typing rapidly. I'm drafting an emergency ex parte restraining order right now. I'm citing severe financial abuse, identity theft, and elder endangerment. The indisputable fact that he abandoned an elderly woman suffering a potentially fatal medical emergency to go play golf establishes a clear legal pattern of reckless neglect. His eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Once a judge signs this, he legally cannot come within 500 feet of you, your mother, or your residence. He'll be removed from his own home immediately. What about the money and the image? Sophie asked. Her narrowed eyes showed she was beginning to understand the ruthless efficiency of the plan. I'll handle the money, I replied. My expression hardened. I'm freezing every financial asset he currently has access to, since he's merely an authorized user on my accounts, and because he used fraud to open the others, I can legally lock him out completely. I allowed myself the smallest pause. He's going to be standing in the middle of that elite country club with a wallet full of useless plastic. Jamal stopped typing for half a second and looked up. And the Tesla? He asked. That's where the image collapses, I answered immediately. If the vehicle financing exists solely under my name and credit profile, then I'm the sole legal owner. Bradley is nothing more than an authorized driver. I pulled out my phone again. I'm canceling the vehicle insurance policy right now. Under standard loan agreements, operating a financed vehicle without insurance is a critical breach of contract. The bank gains the immediate right to repossess the asset to protect its collateral. I met Sophie's stunned gaze. I'm going to have his precious $92,000 status symbol towed directly out of the country club parking lot in front of his vice president. Sophie let out a breathless, dark laugh. He's going to completely lose his mind, she whispered. Good, I replied coldly. He told me to figure it out. So I'm figuring it out. I turned toward Jamal. Finalize the restraining order and start drafting the divorce petition. Include a complete financial appendix documenting the stolen $80,000 and every fraudulent credit line. I want his financial crimes entered into public record before he even realizes what hit him. Consider it done, Jamal said. His fingers flew over the keyboard with renewed intensity. By the time I file this with the emergency weekend judge, Bradley will be legally homeless and facing multiple felony charges. I walked toward the massive floor-to-ceiling hospital windows. Outside, the Dallas sun glowed across the pavement. I imagined Bradley standing inside the polished mahogany bar at Stonebridge Country Club, laughing with wealthy clients, completely unaware that the ground beneath his feet was about to collapse. I pulled my phone from my pocket and unlocked it. I didn't open my messages to text him. I didn't open my dial pad to beg for explanations. Instead, I navigated directly to the emergency fraud department contact list I kept saved for corporate clients. I took a slow breath, letting the final remnants of my marriage disappear completely. Then I pressed the green call button. The phone rang only twice before a live fraud agent answered. Because I had called the direct priority number reserved for corporate risk management professionals, I bypassed the endless automated customer service menus. The agent answered with a crisp professional greeting. "I need an immediate account freeze due to active identity theft and severe fraud," I stated calmly and authoritatively. I provided my mother's full name, social security number, and billing zip code. Because my mother had legally designated me as her durable financial power of attorney during her previous health issues, I had full authority to act on her behalf without delay. The agent typed quickly. "I see the account," she said. "There is currently a pending authorization request for $612 at Stonebridge Country Club. Decline it," I ordered immediately. "Mark it as fraudulent. Also flag every transaction on this account from the opening date onward as unauthorized." I kept my voice perfectly steady. "The person currently using the card is my husband, Bradley. He stole my mother's identity to open this line of credit. I want the physical card permanently disabled, all digital wallet connections revoked, and a federal fraud investigation initiated against him immediately." I could hear the rapid clicking of keys. "The pending country club transaction has officially been declined," the agent confirmed. "The card is now permanently disabled. The system has also blocked all connected digital wallet profiles, including smartphone payment applications." She paused briefly. "If he attempts to swipe the physical card again, the merchant terminal will display a confiscation alert instructing staff to retain the card." "Good," I replied. "I'm also forwarding the file to our internal investigations unit and notifying all 3 major credit bureaus regarding the identity theft claim." "Thank you." I ended the call. "One down," I said quietly. "Two to go." I looked toward Jamal, who was still typing furiously, and Sophie, who stared at me with a mixture of shock and admiration. Over the next 15 minutes, I repeated the exact same ruthless process with National Heritage and Platinum Trust. I systematically dismantled the financial house of cards Bradley had built on my mother's suffering. I locked every digital banking portal, changed every recovery email address, triggered full fraud investigations on every stolen dollar. By the time I hung up with the third bank, the entire $45,000 fraudulent credit network had been sealed shut. I pictured exactly what was happening across town. Bradley stood inside one of the wealthiest private clubs in the state, surrounded by rich executives and high-profile clients. He was probably bragging about his golf handicap, expecting the bartender to bring him a massive tab so he could impress the regional vice president. Instead, he was about to discover that every card in his wallet had become worthless. He no longer had access to our drained savings account. His digital wallets were disabled. His stolen credit lines were dead. He had been completely cut off from money in a place where appearances meant everything. "That handles Mom's financial bleeding," I said, sliding my phone back into my pocket. Then I turned to Jamal. "How's the legal documentation?" Jamal hit one final key and rotated the laptop screen toward me. "The emergency ex parte restraining order is drafted and ready for submission to the weekend duty judge," he confirmed. I cited the active police fraud report together with the severe medical endangerment incident from this morning. Given his history of financial manipulation and the immediate threat he poses to your mother's assets, the judge will sign it within the hour, Jamal said. "Once it's signed, if he comes within 500 feet of your house or this hospital, The police will arrest him on the spot. Good, I replied, feeling the cold analytical armor settle even deeper over my shoulders. We'll file the police report as soon as we secure the perimeter of my house. I turned to Sophie. I need you to go to my house right now. The emergency house keys are in my purse. Pack every expensive tailored suit Bradley owns, every designer shoe, every golf trophy into garbage bags and throw them onto the front lawn. Then reprogram the smart locks completely so his access codes no longer work. A fierce, terrifying smile spread across Sophie's face. It will be my absolute pleasure, she said, already grabbing her car keys. As Sophie practically stormed out of the hospital lobby to evict my husband, I pulled out my phone again. The credit cards were dead. His access to our home was about to disappear permanently. Now it was time for the hardest hit of all. I looked again at the $92,000 automotive loan attached to my name. Bradley loved that Tesla more than he loved me, more than he loved his own family. It was the ultimate symbol of the fake life he had built. And it was time to take it back. I opened the insurance app on my phone and called the priority customer service line. Because my account was premium tier, the hold time was almost non-existent. A representative named David answered. How may I assist you today? I need to immediately remove a vehicle from my master policy, I said while staring out the hospital window. The 2023 Tesla Model S. I want the coverage canceled effective immediately. David stopped typing. Ma'am, I see this vehicle currently has an active lien holder attached to the record, he said cautiously. Standard auto financing contracts require full collision and comprehensive coverage at all times. If I cancel the policy today, we are legally obligated to notify the lien holder. They may force place insurance onto the account with a massive premium increase or even demand immediate repayment of the full loan due to breach of contract. I'm fully aware of the lien holder terms, I answered evenly. Cancel the policy. I am the primary account holder, and I expressly authorize immediate termination of all coverage on that vehicle. Send confirmation strictly to my personal email address. David read the mandatory legal disclaimer warning me about the financial liability of operating an uninsured vehicle on public roads. I confirmed I understood. A moment later, he processed the cancellation. The $92,000 car sitting at the country club was now completely uninsured. Under Texas law, driving without insurance was a serious violation. And under federal lending regulations, Bradley was now operating a financed vehicle in active breach of contract. Before making my next move, I glanced toward the trauma room doors. A nurse had briefly updated us that my mother was stabilizing, but was being prepared for emergency surgical intervention. The $5,000 deposit I paid with my secret emergency credit card had secured her place in the surgical queue. She was fighting for her life in that room. And I was fighting for our future out here. I turned back toward Jamal. The insurance is gone, I told him. But the bank will move too slowly. I need that car physically removed from his possession before he finishes his 18 holes. If he drives it away, tracking it becomes a nightmare once the restraining order goes active. Jamal raised an eyebrow. You can't just steal it back, he warned. If you show up there personally, it ruins the entire strategy of keeping your hands clean. I'm not stealing it, I said with a cold smile that barely touched my lips. I'm having it professionally recovered. I opened the Tesla app on my phone. Because the vehicle was registered solely under my name, I had complete master access to its internal systems. I clicked the location tab. The satellite map loaded instantly, displaying a bright red pin in the valet section of Stonebridge Country Club. He hadn't even parked it himself. He had handed the keys to valet just to show off his imaginary wealth. I opened my browser and searched for high-priority asset recovery services in North Dallas. I found a repossession company specializing in luxury vehicle recovery. I called the number immediately. A rough voice answered on the first ring. Elite Recovery. Mike speaking. My name is Megan, I said directly. I am the sole legal owner of a Tesla Model S currently being operated by an unauthorized user, my estranged husband. A judge is signing an emergency restraining order against him for severe financial abuse. I need the vehicle recovered immediately. Not tomorrow. Right now. Mike sighed heavily. Ma'am, domestic disputes get messy. Unless you have a court order specifically for the vehicle, my guys don't like touching divorce situations. Too much liability. I'm looking at the title and financing agreement right now, I replied calmly. My name is the only name on the documents. He has zero legal ownership. Also, I just canceled the insurance policy, which makes the vehicle a massive liability parked in a public lot. I can email proof of ownership immediately. The car is currently sitting in the valet section of Stonebridge Country Club. I have exact GPS coordinates through the tracking app. I paused briefly before delivering the incentive. I'll pay your standard recovery fee plus a $5,000 emergency dispatch bonus in cash if you get a flatbed truck into that parking lot and remove the car within the next 30 minutes. The line went silent except for loud keyboard clicking. Finally, Mike spoke again. Send the documents to the email listed on our website. If your name is the only one on that title, we're good to go. I exported the digital title and financing agreement from my encrypted cloud storage and emailed everything directly to dispatch, including screenshots of the Tesla's exact GPS location. Less than 2 minutes later, Mike came back on the line. Documents verified, he confirmed briskly. You are the sole legal owner. Since it's a smart vehicle, don't lock the doors or trigger the alarm until my guy gets the wheels secured. I'll disable the security remotely when your driver is in position. How long until they arrive? Mike shouted something in the background before returning. I've got a flatbed finishing another recovery 10 minutes from Stonebridge. We'll have your car gone before your husband finishes his drinks. I ended the call and exhaled slowly. The final trap had been set. Jamal closed his encrypted laptop with a sharp snap. The emergency petition has officially been filed with the county clerk, he announced. Because we included the active identity theft case number and fully documented your mother's medical endangerment, the weekend emergency judge is expediting review. I expect the signed protective order to hit the state police database within the hour. What happens when it's approved? I asked. Once that order is entered, Jamal explained, leaning forward, Bradley becomes an immediate legal threat if he approaches you. The order creates a mandatory 500-foot buffer zone. He cannot come to this hospital. He cannot enter your workplace tomorrow. Most importantly, he loses every legal right to enter your shared residence. Jamal's expression darkened. If he steps onto your property or even touches the front door, it becomes an automatic violation of a judicial order. Police won't debate it. They'll cuff him and take him directly to county jail. I nodded slowly, feeling a grim wave of satisfaction. The invisible legal wall was closing around him. Now we just needed the physical perimeter secured before he realized he was under attack. Across town, inside our affluent gated community, Sophie pulled my backup car into the sweeping concrete driveway of the house Bradley and I shared. Later, she told me those next 30 minutes were some of the most satisfying of her life. Our house was enormous, a sprawling modern colonial Bradley insisted we buy purely to project the image of corporate success. He loved the house more than our marriage. To him, it was a castle designed to impress his country club friends. Today, the castle officially shut its gates. Sophie unlocked the front door with the emergency key hidden in my purse and stepped into the pristine foyer. She didn't waste a second admiring the expensive interior. She marched directly to the central smart home control panel mounted in the hallway. Because I was the primary administrator on every internet and home security account, I had already texted her the master credentials. With a few rapid keystrokes, she completely erased Bradley's biometric fingerprint profile from the system. She deleted his custom entry codes, disconnected his phone from the garage door receiver, revoked his remote camera access. Then, just to ensure he was fully locked out, she grabbed a screwdriver from the kitchen drawer and physically replaced the front door lock cylinder with the emergency backup set I kept stored in the utility closet. In under 10 minutes, Bradley had been entirely removed from his own home. But Sophie wasn't finished. A simple lockout was too polite for a man who abandoned an elderly woman to die so he could play golf. She climbed the massive staircase and walked directly into the master bedroom closet. Bradley's wardrobe was practically a shrine to vanity. Rows of custom Italian suits hung in perfect color-coded sections. Imported leather shoes lined polished shelves. Designer golf polos, silk ties, velvet dinner jackets. He spent hours obsessing over every expensive thread. Sophie walked downstairs, grabbed industrial black trash bags from the kitchen, and came back upstairs. Then she started ripping his life apart. She didn't fold anything. Didn't care if the silk snagged. Didn't care if the leather scratched. She stuffed his $2,000 suits, designer jackets, golf clothes, cologne bottles, monogrammed country club towels, and crystal golf trophies into thick black bags with ruthless efficiency. 6 giant bags, heavy with the weight of his fake luxury lifestyle. One by one, she dragged them downstairs, the heavy plastic thudding against the carpeted staircase. Then she hauled everything outside, not neatly beside the curb, directly onto the perfectly manicured front lawn. One of the bags snagged on a decorative rosebush and split open, spilling expensive Italian loafers and tangled silk ties across the dirt. Sophie didn't bother picking them up. She stood on the porch, dusted off her hands, and surveyed the quiet, wealthy neighborhood. Several neighbors walking golden retrievers had already stopped on the sidewalk, openly staring at the mountain of expensive trash ruining the pristine landscaping. Sophie pulled out her phone, snapped a picture, and texted it to me with a single message. The trash has been taken out. Meanwhile, across the city on the sunlit terrace of Stone Bridge Country Club, Bradley was in his element. He sat at the center of a premium mahogany table swirling a glass of 50-year-old single malt scotch. To his right sat the regional vice president whose approval Bradley desperately craved. To his left sat a wealthy logistics executive they were trying to lure into a massive software contract. Bradley wore his new $30,000 Rolex prominently, ensuring the gold bezel caught the afternoon sunlight. He felt invincible. The night before, he had successfully transferred the stolen $80,000 into an offshore corporate account, effectively hiding the embezzlement before Monday morning's audit. And best of all, he had used his wife's perfect credit to do it. When he thought about Megan, he only felt irritation. He imagined her panicking beside her sick mother in the living room. In his mind, Diane had always been an inconvenience. Her medical equipment ruined the aesthetic of the house. Her doctor appointments interrupted his schedule. He had told Megan to figure it out, and as far as he was concerned, that absolved him of responsibility. Top executives didn't spend Sundays riding in ambulances. "Allow me to handle the bill, gentlemen," Bradley announced loudly as the waiter approached the table. "It's an honor doing business with you." The waiter handed him the leather bill folder. The total for the champagne, imported steaks, and premium whiskey exceeded $2,000. Bradley barely glanced at it. With a smug flick of his wrist, he dropped a sleek black credit card onto the silver tray. The Platinum and Trust card. Opened fraudulently using Diane's social security number. "Keep the change," Bradley said smoothly after reading the waiter's name tag. "Add 20% for yourself." Thank you, sir, the waiter replied politely before returning inside. Bradley leaned back, basking in the admiration of his vice president and client. He had just started exaggerating a story about his golf handicap when the waiter returned. Without the bill folder. Without a pen. He held the black card delicately between two fingers. His expression had gone completely rigid. "Excuse me, sir," the waiter said carefully. "I'm terribly sorry, but your transaction was declined." Bradley froze mid-laugh. "What do you mean declined?" he snapped. "Run it again. Those heavy metal cards have sensitive strips." "I already ran it 3 times, sir," the waiter replied stiffly. "The terminal is returning a hard decline code." The logistics executive shifted awkwardly. The vice president slowly raised an eyebrow. Bradley felt heat crawl up his neck. "Probably a fraud hold," he lied quickly with a forced laugh. "My wife's a financial analyst. She's always moving investments around and triggering alerts. You know how women get when they micromanage finances." He pulled out another card. The Capital Express card. "Also stolen from Diane. Try this one." The waiter took it and disappeared. Bradley forced himself to continue the conversation, but the atmosphere at the table had changed completely. The illusion of effortless wealth had cracked. Less than 2 minutes later, the waiter returned. This time accompanied by the floor manager. Bradley's stomach dropped. "Mr. Bradley," the manager said quietly but firmly, "the second card has also been declined. Additionally, our terminal received a direct fraud alert from the issuing bank instructing us to confiscate the card and refuse all further transactions under this name." The entire table fell silent. The vice president stared at Bradley with visible disgust. The client looked at his watch, clearly searching for an excuse to leave. Bradley was sweating through his expensive tailored polo. "This is some ridiculous banking error," he stammered, standing so fast his chair scraped loudly across the stone patio. "Please excuse me, gentlemen. I've got a corporate backup wallet in my car." He practically ran from the table, desperate for the safety of his $92,000 Tesla. Bradley shoved through the country club doors into the blazing Texas heat and handed his valet ticket to the attendant. "Bring up the black Tesla Model S," he ordered sharply. "I'm in a hurry." The valet hesitated awkwardly. Sir? I think there's a problem with your vehicle." Bradley followed the valet's pointing finger, and the blood drained from his face. A massive flatbed tow truck sat across 2 premium parking spaces. Hydraulic gears screeched loudly as thick yellow straps tightened around the tires of Bradley's pristine Tesla. The front end was already lifted halfway onto the steel platform. "Hey!" Bradley screamed, abandoning every trace of executive composure. He sprinted across the asphalt. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Get your hands off my car right now." The tow operator didn't even flinch. "Elite Recovery Services," the driver said flatly while continuing to operate the controls. "Vehicle is being legally repossessed. Stay clear of the machinery." "Repossession?" Bradley spat. "Are you insane? I'm a regional director. I make more in a month than you make all year. Put that car down right now or I'll sue you and your trash company into bankruptcy." The driver locked the hydraulics and secured the Tesla fully onto the truck. "A woman named Megan called us," he replied without emotion. "Provided the title and loan documents. She's the sole legal owner. You have zero legal claim to this vehicle." Blind rage exploded across Bradley's face. He lunged forward and grabbed the tow operator by the fluorescent vest. "Listen to me, you blue-collar piece of..." A police siren suddenly cut through the parking lot. Red and blue lights flashed across the metallic paint of the suspended Tesla. 2 patrol cars rolled aggressively into the valet area. Elite Recovery had standard procedures for luxury repossessions at high-end venues. Knowing entitled owners often became violent when stripped of status symbols, Dispatch had requested police standby the moment the truck arrived. 2 officers stepped out cautiously. "Step away from the driver immediately," the taller officer ordered. Bradley released the vest instantly and raised his hands. "Officers, thank God you're here," he said quickly. "This man is trying to steal my vehicle. Arrest him immediately." The officer ignored him. The tow operator silently handed over a clipboard with printed ownership records. The officer checked the VIN against the digital title, then looked directly at Bradley. "Sir, what's your name?" "Bradley," he answered proudly. "Owner of that vehicle." The officer glanced down again. "No, you're not." He tapped the paperwork. "The sole legal owner is Megan. Insurance on this vehicle was canceled today, placing the financing agreement in breach. The registered owner authorized this recovery. Your name does not appear on the title, but I'm her husband," Bradley shouted. "We're married." "Take that up with divorce court," the officer replied coldly. "As of now, this repossession is fully legal. If you interfere again, you'll be arrested for assault and disturbing the peace." Bradley stood frozen under the brutal Texas sun. Then he heard quiet murmuring behind him. He turned. Standing on the elevated stone terrace of the country club were his vice president and the VIP client. Watching everything. My desk phone vibrated softly against the glass surface. It wasn't an internal office call. It was an automated alert from building security. "Visitor entering main elevator, Bradley." I looked at the screen for exactly 1 second before locking the phone and placing it face down on the desk. Jamal didn't need to ask. My expression had already answered him. "He's here," I said calmly. Jamal opened the manila folder and spread several documents across the desk in perfect alignment. The signed restraining order, the banking records, the preliminary corporate audit report, the international wire transfers. Everything arranged with surgical precision. "Remember something important," Jamal said quietly. "The moment he walks through those doors, this stops being a marriage problem. It becomes a documented criminal violation." I nodded slowly. Beyond the glass walls of my office, I could see movement ripple through the finance department. Some coworkers pretended to work, but tension hung in the air like static electricity. Internal security was already positioned discreetly near reception. Then it happened. The double doors to the department slammed open. Bradley appeared like a human storm. His navy suit was still wrinkled and distorted from spending the night folded inside a garbage bag. His tie hung crooked. His eyes were bloodshot. His hair was disheveled. He looked like a man who had lost a war in under 48 hours. And still, he was trying to act like the most important man in the room. He strode past reception without acknowledging anyone. "Where the hell is she?" Bradley barked. "Where's Megan?" The entire office went dead silent. Keyboards stopped clicking. Conversations died mid-sentence. A few employees slowly rose from their desks. I remained seated behind my glass desk, perfectly still. Bradley finally turned his head toward my private office. Our eyes locked through the transparent wall. The rage on his face instantly transformed into something worse. Desperation. He marched straight toward me. The glass office door slammed open against the wall. "But considering the preliminary financial evidence," he paused briefly, "that will likely change very soon." Bradley turned toward me one final time. He expected hatred. He expected fury. He expected tears. But I felt nothing anymore. Only exhaustion. Cold exhaustion. "Megan, please." I slowly shook my head. "You're finished." The federal agents escorted him out of my office. The entire finance floor remained silent as Bradley walked between 2 federal agents and 2 armed security guards down the corridor. Nobody said a word. The elevator doors opened. Bradley stepped inside slowly. The doors began to close. And just before he disappeared from sight, He looked up at me one last time. He no longer looked like a powerful executive. He looked exactly like what he had always been beneath the Rolex, the Italian suits, and the Tesla. A small man. And terrified. He never got to finish the threat. The heavy glass door behind Bradley burst open so violently that it slammed against the interior wall with a sharp crack that echoed across the silent trading floor. Two armed corporate security officers stepped into my office in perfect formation, their polished black shoes moving with cold precision across the carpet. Right behind them walked a third man in a dark navy suit carrying a slim leather credential wallet. Not corporate security. Federal. Bradley froze mid-sentence. Every ounce of color drained from his already exhausted face as the man calmly flipped open the leather wallet and displayed a gold badge. "Bradley Mercer," the agent asked evenly. The entire financial floor outside my office went dead silent. Dozens of analysts stood frozen beside their desks, pretending not to stare while very obviously staring. Bradley blinked rapidly. What is this?" The federal agent stepped fully into the office. "My name is Special Agent Daniel Reyes with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have a federal warrant authorizing seizure of all corporate devices, financial records, and communications related to an ongoing investigation into wire fraud, international financial laundering, falsification of vendor accounts, and corporate embezzlement." Bradley laughed. Not confidently. Desperately. "You've got the wrong person," he said immediately, backing away from my desk. "This is because of her. My wife is mentally unstable. She fabricated." "We already spoke to your employer," Agent Reyes interrupted calmly. That stopped him cold. The agent removed several stapled documents from a thin case folder. "Your company's internal audit confirmed unauthorized financial movement through Cayman subsidiary accounts beginning approximately 18 months ago. We also have recorded authorization signatures linked directly to your employee credentials." Bradley's mouth opened slightly. No sound came out. Jamal stood quietly near the wall with his arms folded across his chest, watching the collapse with the detached composure of a man who had seen criminals unravel hundreds of times before. Bradley turned toward me suddenly. This time his expression wasn't rage. It was terror. "Megan," he said hoarsely, "you called the FBI?" I looked at him steadily across the glass desk. "No," I replied calmly. "You did." The realization visibly shattered him. His knees almost buckled as the timeline finally connected in his head. The frozen accounts. The audit. The Cayman transfers. The corporate lockout. The security escort. The federal agent standing 6 feet away. For the first time since I had known him, Bradley finally understood something horrifying. Nobody was coming to save him. "This is insane," he whispered. "I was going to replace the money." Agent Reyes gave him a long look. "That statement alone is extraordinarily unhelpful to your situation, Mr. Mercer." One of the security officers stepped forward. "Sir, place your hands behind your back." Bradley jerked backward instinctively. The movement triggered both officers immediately. The room exploded into motion. One guard grabbed Bradley's wrist while the second secured his shoulder against the glass wall hard enough to rattle the entire office partition. Several employees outside gasped audibly. "I didn't steal anything," Bradley shouted now, panic completely consuming him. "I moved assets temporarily." "That's not theft. Corporate executives do this all the time." "No," Jamal said quietly from across the room. "They don't." The handcuffs clicked around Bradley's wrists. The sound was strangely small compared to the complete destruction of his life happening in that moment. He twisted around wildly, trying to look at me over his shoulder as the agents secured him. "Megan, please," he said suddenly. And there it was. The final transformation. Not arrogance. Not manipulation. Begging. Pure survival instinct. "You can stop this," he pleaded frantically. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them I was under pressure. Please. Please don't do this. I stared at him for several long seconds. Then I opened the manila folder sitting on my desk and removed a single photograph. The paramedics lifting my unconscious mother onto a stretcher outside my house. I placed the photograph silently on the glass desk between us. Bradley looked at it, then at me, and finally understood there would be no mercy. You left her on the floor, I said quietly. My voice never rose. You stepped over her because you were late for golf. Bradley's eyes filled with something close to genuine fear. Not fear of prison. Fear of consequence. The security officers began escorting him toward the door. He stumbled once, nearly losing balance as they guided him through the open office floor. Every employee watched. Nobody spoke. The same man who had spent years obsessing over status, appearances, luxury cars, executive privilege, and dominance was now being walked across polished corporate flooring in wrinkled clothes and handcuffs, while an FBI agent carried the evidence box containing his seized electronics. The elevator doors opened. Before stepping inside, Bradley turned one final time toward me. His face looked hollow, destroyed. I loved you, he said weakly. I met his eyes without emotion. No, I answered. You loved having someone clean up your messes. The elevator doors closed. And just like that, the noise stopped. The floor remained silent for several seconds until one of the analysts quietly sat back down at his desk and resumed typing. Then another. Then another. Life moved on. Jamal exhaled slowly beside me. Well, he said dryly, adjusting his cufflinks, that escalated efficiently. For the first time in almost 24 straight hours, I finally leaned back in my chair and allowed myself to breathe. My mother was alive. Bradley was gone. And the empire he built on lies had collapsed in less than 2 days. Jamal watched him carefully for a long moment. The office had become so silent that the faint hum of fluorescent lighting above the trading floor sounded deafening. Bradley's fingers tightened violently around the metal door handle as if it were the only thing physically keeping him upright. The Cayman account, Jamal continued calmly, is not theoretical anymore. Your company already confirmed the transfer chain this morning. Bradley's breathing became shallow. No, he whispered automatically. Jamal opened the manila folder again and removed another document. This is the internal forensic summary generated by your employer's audit team at 7:12 this morning. It identifies repeated invoice manipulation tied to your executive credentials. You routed corporate revenue through an offshore holding structure, then temporarily replaced missing funds using stolen marital assets 48 hours before a scheduled audit. Bradley shook his head rapidly. No, you don't understand. I was fixing it. That sentence, Jamal replied evenly, is effectively a confession. Outside the office walls, more employees had stopped pretending to work. Analysts stood frozen beside glowing computer monitors. 2 junior associates near the reception desk openly stared through the glass wall with their coffees still in hand. Bradley noticed them, and that realization broke something inside him. For the first time all morning, his voice dropped below a shout. Megan, he said weakly. I looked at him without emotion. You forged my signature, I answered quietly. You opened credit cards using my mother's identity while she was recovering from cardiac treatment. His eyes darted frantically between me and Jamal. I was going to pay everything back. Jamal gave a cold, almost exhausted sigh. Do you know what every white-collar criminal says when the audit finally catches them? He asked. Bradley said nothing. I was going to pay it back. The words landed like concrete. Bradley's shoulders visibly collapsed. His expensive arrogance, the executive posture, the smug dominance he had weaponized for years, it all evaporated in real time. Now he just looked tired, desperate, Small. You turned my entire company against me, he muttered toward me. No, I said calmly. You did that yourself. Bradley's jaw clenched violently. For one dangerous second, rage flashed across his face again. You think you've won? He snapped suddenly. You think ruining me fixes anything? Your mother is alive. You got your revenge. So what now? You destroy everything? You send me to prison. You already sent yourself there, Jamal answered. Then came the sound. A sharp electronic chirp from the hallway. The security access door near reception opened. 3 figures stepped onto the floor simultaneously. 2 uniformed building security officers. And behind them, a federal agent in a dark blue suit. Bradley went completely still. The agent walked forward with measured calm while removing a leather credential wallet from inside his jacket. He flipped it open. Gold badge. Federal seal. Bradley Mercer, the agent asked. Bradley's lips parted slightly, but no sound emerged. My name is Special Agent Collins with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have probable cause to believe you engaged in interstate wire fraud, financial identity theft, and corporate embezzlement involving international banking channels. The room felt electrically charged. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Bradley suddenly pointed at me with a shaking hand. She did this, he blurted out. She hacked my accounts. She froze my access. She's lying because we're getting divorced. The agent didn't even look at me. Instead, he reached into his case file and removed several printed banking records. Your employer already cooperated with federal investigators this morning, the agent stated calmly. The offshore transfers originated from your executive credentials and personal authentication tokens. Bradley's eyes widened in genuine panic. No. We also obtained copies of the fraudulent credit applications opened under Diane Whitaker's Social Security number. Bradley physically staggered backward. His legs hit the edge of the conference table behind him. You don't understand, he whispered again. But now his voice sounded hollow. Broken. The FBI agent stepped closer. Mr. Mercer, he said firmly, at this time, you are being placed under federal investigation pending formal charges. You are instructed not to leave the county and not to destroy electronic evidence or attempt contact with financial institutions connected to this case. Bradley looked at me one last time. Not with hatred anymore. With terror. Because he finally understood the truth. This was no longer a marital fight. No amount of charm, intimidation, manipulation, or money could control what was happening now. The system he thought he could outsmart had finally closed around him. The air in my office suddenly felt incredibly thin, as if all the oxygen had been sucked straight out of the room. He withdrew $80,000 from your joint marital savings account to quietly cover a massive deficit in his company's international vendor ledger, Jamal continued. His voice carried an undeniable authority. You entered panic mode when your Q3 audit started this morning. You thought you could move stolen marital funds offshore, balance your corporate books, and save your career before anyone noticed. You forgot one detail. He looked directly at Bradley. Your wife is a senior financial risk analyst. She traced the transfers, compiled a clean digital forensic dossier of your embezzlement, and sent it directly to your CFO last night. No, Bradley shook his head violently. Sweat was already ruining his carefully styled hair. No. You didn't do that. You wouldn't do that. I'm your husband. His voice cracked. If I go down for this, I lose everything. My job. My entire life. You made your decision yesterday morning, I said at last. My voice cut through the room like cold steel. You looked at my dying mother gasping for air, called her a burden, and left to play golf. You thought you were untouchable. You thought my family was collateral damage for your lifestyle. I leaned forward slightly. You lost everything the moment you walked out that door. Bradley's breathing turned shallow and erratic. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an exit that didn't exist. "I'll call Harrison Cole right now," he snapped suddenly, desperation breaking through rage. "I'll tell him you fabricated everything. You're trying to frame me." "You're absolutely right," a new voice interrupted from the back of the office. Bradley froze. A door behind my desk opened. 3 figures stepped into the fluorescent light. Not corporate security. Not local police. Dark suits. Cold posture. Badges visible without effort. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The lead agent moved first, efficient and controlled. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I'm Special Agent Reynolds with the Federal Bureau of Investigation," he said, showing his credentials with calm precision. "White Collar Crimes Division." Bradley stared at the badge like it wasn't real. No, you can't arrest me. I'm a regional director. I have a presentation." "There is no error," Reynolds said flatly. "We have bank transfer records, Cayman holding account identifiers, and authenticated digital signatures linking you directly to corporate embezzlement and attempted concealment using stolen private assets." At his signal, the agent beside him stepped forward, metal cuffs clicking softly in his hand. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." The sound of steel changed everything. Bradley's expression collapsed in real time, rage dissolving into raw panic, then into something emptier. He stumbled backward until he hit the edge of my glass desk. "Jamal," he choked, spinning toward him. "You're a lawyer. You defend people like me. Tell them this is civil. Tell them I need counsel." Jamal looked at him with complete, quiet disgust. "If I represented high-net-worth clients in federal fraud cases," he said evenly, straightening his cuffs, "I'd charge $500 an hour." A pause. "You currently have $42 to your name." He stepped slightly closer. "And I'm already counsel for the victims of your identity fraud." The silence in the office was immediate and absolute. Even the keyboards outside the glass walls stopped clicking. No one moved. No one breathed normally. Bradley lifted his head from the floor, still handcuffed, his face completely broken. He blinked as if he hadn't understood the sentence. "What?" he whispered. The federal agent kept a firm grip on his arm, pulling him slightly upward to bring him to his feet. The metal cuffs clinked again, sharp, final. "I didn't look away. I didn't say it the way you said it about my mother," I continued, calm in a way that felt heavier than shouting. "I said it as a fact." Bradley shook his head violently. No. "Megan, please. We can fix this. I love you. This is just a mistake. Work stress. Pressure." Jamal stepped to the side, cutting off any path toward me or the exit. "This is not a misunderstanding," he said quietly. "This is a federal case file." Agent Reynolds tightened his hold on Bradley and turned him toward the door. "Sir, you have the right to remain silent." Bradley struggled weakly, but his body no longer obeyed him. It was as if everything that once held him together had collapsed at once, his confidence, his rage, his control. "Megan," he shouted again, raw panic breaking through. "Please, don't do this to me." I took one step closer, just enough for him to hear me clearly without raising my voice. "You did this to yourself," I said. And for the first time, there was no answer. Only the sound of cuffs, the glass door opening, and federal agents escorting him out of my office, while his life, finally, stopped being something he could control. My voice carried the same cold, merciless tone he had used on me 24 hours earlier. "Not my problem. Figure it out yourself." Bradley's mouth opened in a silent scream of absolute desperation as Special Agent Reynolds began reading him his Miranda rights. The 2 agents lifted him roughly. He could barely even stand. His legs dragged across the floor as they escorted him out of my office. I stayed at the doorway and watched as the federal agents led my handcuffed, sobbing husband through the center of the finance department. Every phone on the floor had stopped ringing. Every keyboard had gone silent. Dozens of my coworkers remained at their desks, watching in stunned silence as the once arrogant executive was paraded out in disgrace. The elevator doors slid open at the end of the hallway. The agents pushed him inside. And when the heavy metal doors finally closed with a soft chime, the suffocating shadow Bradley had cast over my life was permanently extinguished. The weeks that followed Bradley's highly public arrest unfolded with the fast, merciless efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Once the federal government locks onto a white-collar criminal, it simply doesn't let go. I returned home in silence, finally able to enjoy the deep, steady peace that comes after removing a toxic, narcissistic presence from daily life. In the following weeks, I worked closely with Jamal and a team of federal forensic accountants. Together, we carefully unraveled the financial web Bradley had been weaving behind my back for years. Because I had triggered fraud alerts the same day he stole the money, my legal separation from his growing debt was clean and immediate. The $92,000 Tesla loan was fully discharged from my name after federal handwriting and digital signature experts confirmed he had forged my authorization. The bank absorbed the loss and added it directly to Bradley's restitution balance. My mother's credit record was completely restored. The 3 credit cards he had opened in her name were officially reclassified as federal identity theft, wiping out the $45,000 in fraudulent charges he had run up on luxury alcohol and country club spending. While I secured my family's financial future, the legal system dismantled Bradley piece by piece. On the corporate side, the Federal Bureau of Investigation worked alongside internal auditors at his company. His employer and its CEO, Harrison Cole, filed a civil suit in parallel with the criminal charges. The Cayman Islands shell company was frozen, seized, and liquidated within weeks. The $80,000 he had stolen from our joint savings account was confiscated as key evidence in the federal fraud case. Bradley had always believed wealth made him untouchable. Now he had nothing left to shield him. With no resources to hire a high-powered defense attorney, he was assigned an overworked public defender who had little patience for his executive arrogance. To satisfy restitution requirements, the court ordered full asset forfeiture. Everything he had used to project his image, luxury watches, designer suits, custom golf clubs, was cataloged and auctioned off. Even the $30,000 Rolex he had bought the day my mother collapsed was seized as evidence. He was systematically stripped down to nothing. I was sitting in my living room on a Tuesday night, drinking chamomile tea and enjoying the complete silence of my house when Jamal called. His voice carried a quiet, controlled satisfaction. "Megan, you need to come to my office first thing tomorrow morning," he said. There was a brief pause. "I just got a very desperate call from Bradley's court-appointed defense attorney. They're practically begging for a formal meeting." I raised an eyebrow, calm but attentive. "Why would they want to meet now?" I asked. "The federal case is already in motion." Jamal exhaled lightly, like someone watching a finished game unfold. "It changes everything for sentencing," he said. "The federal prosecutor is pushing for the maximum penalty for corporate wire fraud." The letter felt heavier than it should have been as I walked back up the driveway. Inside the house, everything was quiet in the best possible way. No tension. No uncertainty. Just life continuing without him. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the manila envelope. It was not a surprise, not really. But it still carried a certain finality that made the air in the room feel sharper. It was a formal court notice. A scheduling order. Bradley's case had been moved forward. The federal charges were progressing exactly as expected. And buried in the language was something else, something more definitive than anything Jamal had said on the phone. A preliminary plea hearing had been set. I exhaled slowly and leaned back in my chair. For the first time in a long time, there was no urgency in my body when I thought about Bradley. No anger. No fear. Not even curiosity. Just distance. The kind of distance that forms when someone becomes legally, emotionally, and practically removed from your life. From the living room, I could hear my mother laughing softly at something on television. Sophie was in the kitchen rearranging flowers she insisted made the house feel alive. Jamal had left a stack of legal files on the counter, already moving on to the next case, as if this one had already been decided. And in a way, it had. Bradley was no longer part of the system I lived in. He was part of the system that was now processing him. I placed the court notice back into the envelope and set it aside without urgency. Then I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the yard. It was quiet. Ordinary. Stable. No sirens. No shouting. No collapse. Just a house that finally belonged to people who knew how to live inside it. We sat in silence for a few minutes, looking through the glass walls of my office at the busy floor of financial analysts working outside. I kept my eyes fixed on the illuminated numbers above the main elevator bank at the far end of the floor. I watched the digital display track a car rapidly ascending from the lobby on the ground floor. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. The numbers finally stopped at 14. Jamal slowly stood up, buttoning his suit jacket with a calm, practiced movement. I remained perfectly seated behind my desk, my hands neatly folded over the manila folder. A loud electronic beep echoed through the quiet reception area, signaling the elevator's arrival. The heavy silver doors slid open, and Bradley stormed out. He emerged with the manic energy of a cornered animal. He completely ignored the main reception desk, brushing past the startled gasp of the administrative assistant. He burst into the open office area of my department. His heavy footsteps echoed over the soft hum of ringing phones and clicking keyboards. My coworkers, an observant floor of financial analysts, immediately stopped what they were doing. They stared at the disheveled man in a ruined silk suit who was practically hyperventilating as he aggressively navigated the maze of cubicles. He reached my glass-walled office and didn't bother to knock. He grabbed the heavy metal handle and shoved the door so violently it slammed against the stopper with a loud bang. He stood in the doorway, chest heaving, face flushed and ugly red. The contrast between us could not have been more extreme. I sat perfectly still behind my pristine glass desk in a tailored suit, projecting absolute calm. He looked like a man who had spent the night sleeping in a garbage bag, ironically, exactly where his clothes had been. "You're insane," Bradley shouted as he entered my office and slammed the door behind him. The thick glass did little to muffle his voice from the dozens of analysts watching outside. "You changed the locks on my house. You stole my car. You had the audacity to serve me a restraining order. Do you have any idea what you've done to my life today?" I didn't say a single word. I simply leaned back in my ergonomic chair, folded my hands neatly on my desk, and let him speak. I knew narcissists hated silence more than anything. Silence forced them to fill the void, and in panic, they always dug their own graves. "You're going to fix this right now," Bradley ordered, stepping closer and slamming both palms onto my glass desk. He leaned in, trying to physically intimidate me. "You're going to call Capital Express Bank and Platinum Trust. You're going to tell them the fraud reports were a massive mistake. Then you're going to call HR at my company and tell them you fabricated those ridiculous accusations because you're a jealous, hysterical wife. If you don't clear my name and restore my access within 10 minutes, I swear, Megan, I will destroy you completely." Outside the office, several coworkers had already stood up. The floor manager held a phone, likely calling security, exactly as I expected. I bring in the real money, Bradley continued, his voice rising as my silence unraveled him. That $80,000 in our joint savings belongs to me. I'm the man of the house. I control the finances. You have no right to freeze my assets or block my access. I needed that money to balance an international corporate ledger. You're ruining a multi-million-dollar transition. He was practically spitting now. He had just openly admitted, in a room with a white-collar crime attorney, that he had unilaterally moved our life savings into an unauthorized corporate transfer. He was confessing to the exact financial crimes I had meticulously documented. I looked at his bloodshot eyes and the sweat running down his face. You told me my mother was a burden, I said calmly, my voice sharp as a blade. You told me to handle it, so I handled it. I'm no longer your wife, Bradley. I am your consequence. Bradley let out a dark, mocking laugh, pointing at me. You're nothing, he spat. You think you can beat me? I'll hire the best lawyers in the state. I'll drag you through court for years until you're bankrupt. He didn't get to finish. Jamal, who had been sitting quietly in the corner just outside Bradley's tunnel vision, stood up. He adjusted his dark charcoal suit jacket with slow deliberation and stepped forward, placing himself firmly between me and the desk's edge. Bradley blinked, noticing him for the first time. What are you doing here? He snapped. Is this your lawyer? Hiding behind your sister's husband. Jamal didn't raise his voice. He lifted the thick manila folder from my desk and pulled out a single sealed legal document. You are currently within 500 feet of my client, Jamal said evenly. You are in direct violation of a court order. He pressed the paper into Bradley's chest. Bradley scoffed and looked down. An emergency ex parte protection order, Jamal continued calmly. Signed by a sitting judge. This is not a divorce petition. This is a binding criminal court order. Bradley's expression shifted. The arrogance vanished. Jamal didn't stop. We obtained full federal credit reports yesterday morning. While you were drinking champagne, Mr. Bradley. Bradley swallowed hard. We know about the 3 credit cards you opened using Diane's social security number. We know you maxed them out $45,000 total. We also know you forged Megan's digital signature to finance your $92,000 Tesla because your credit was destroyed. Bradley's face drained of color. This constitutes identity theft, wire fraud, and elder financial abuse under federal and state law. Bradley turned toward me, panic rising. It's a misunderstanding, he stammered. We're married. Couples share finances. I was consolidating debt. Jamal gave a short, humorless laugh. That is not consolidation. That is fraud. He pulled out another document. And let's talk about holding of SOAR in the Cayman Islands. Bradley's knees buckled. He grabbed the door handle just to stay upright. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. The air in the office felt thinner, as if oxygen had been drained from the room. You withdrew $80,000 from your joint savings to cover a corporate shortfall, Jamal continued. You panicked when your audit started. You tried to move stolen marital funds offshore to cover a fraudulent ledger imbalance. Bradley shook his head violently. No, I didn't. You did, I said quietly. And you chose it the moment you left my mother on the floor and went golfing. His breathing broke. Then another voice came from the back of the office. The door to the executive conference room opened. 3 federal agents stepped out. FBI. The lead agent showed his credentials. Bradley, he said. I'm Special Agent Reynolds. You are under arrest for wire fraud and financial crimes. Bradley stared at him. No, there's a mistake. I'm a regional director. There is no mistake, the agent replied. Handcuffs came out. That was the moment his entire persona collapsed. He tried to turn to Jamal. You're my lawyer, he begged. You have to represent me. Jamal looked at him coldly. I represent victims. And I don't work for free. The cuffs clicked shut. Bradley collapsed to his knees, sobbing. "Megan, please," he choked. "Don't let them do this. We're family." I looked down at him and said nothing. He was led out through the office in handcuffs as dozens of coworkers watched in stunned silence. The elevator doors closed behind him. And just like that, he was gone. Weeks passed. Then months. The federal system moved quickly. His assets were seized. His offshore accounts frozen. His luxury possessions liquidated. His Tesla repossessed. His corporate network dismantled. He was sentenced to federal prison. And I didn't think about him anymore. My mother recovered fully after a successful bypass surgery. My sister and Jamal helped rebuild our home into something warm again. My career advanced rapidly after my fraud investigation work became central to a major corporate case. One evening, I stood outside my home watching the sunset, hearing my family laugh inside. And I finally understood something simple. Freedom isn't just financial independence. It's the ability to walk away from anyone who treats your peace like something disposable.